The sergeant ordered no mercy. The human cadet responded with precision and style. Part 1. The transport ship landed on Velka Prime with a loud hiss. The doors opened and 12 humans stepped out onto alien ground for the first time. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The sky was purple, and 2 small suns hung low on the horizon. Danny Reyes was the first one off the ship. He was 22 years old, with dark hair and brown eyes that seemed to notice everything. He came from a colony world called New Austin, a place where people worked hard and complained little. His father had been a soldier. His grandfather had been a soldier. Fighting was in his blood. Behind him came the other human cadets. There was Katie Brennan, a woman with bright red hair and a sharp tongue. She came from Mars and had a temper that matched her hair color. There was Luis Garza, a quiet man from the Luna shipyards who was better with machines than with people. And there were 9 others, all young, all nervous, all wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. The Galactic Coalition Military Academy stood before them like a mountain of glass and steel. It had trained warriors from 47 different species for over 300 years. The best soldiers in the galaxy came from this place. Generals, admirals, heroes of 1,000 battles had all walked these halls. And now, for the first time, humans would walk them too. A creature waited for them at the entrance. It was massive, standing over 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin covered in black scales that shined like polished stone. Its eyes were yellow and cold, and when it spoke, its voice was like rocks grinding together. "I am Sergeant Crickstill," the creature said. A small device on its chest turned the alien words into English. "I will be your primary instructor. You will obey my orders without question. You will train harder than you have ever trained before. And most of you will fail." The humans stood in a line, trying not to show their fear. Danny kept his face calm and his eyes forward. Sergeant Crickstill walked slowly down the line, studying each human like they were insects. He was thinking about stepping on. When he reached Danny, he stopped. "You are small," the sergeant said. "You have no claws, no armor on your skin, no poison in your bite. Your species has been traveling between stars for only 60 years. Tell me, human, why should I waste my time training you?" Danny looked up at the massive alien. He did not blink. He did not look away. "Because we learn fast, Sergeant," he said. Something flickered in the sergeant's yellow eyes. It might have been surprise. It might have been amusement. It was hard to tell. "We shall see," Sergeant Crickstill said. Then he turned and walked toward the academy. "Follow me. Your training begins now." The inside of the academy was even more impressive than the outside. The hallways were wide enough for the largest species to walk through easily. Strange symbols covered the walls, the written languages of dozens of alien races. Cadets from species Danny had never seen before stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Some looked curious. Some looked confused. Most looked like they thought the humans did not belong. Here, a tall alien with silver fur and large amber eyes fell into step beside Danny. It walked on 2 legs like a human, but moved with a grace that no human could match. "You are the new ones," it said. Its voice was soft and musical. "The humans. I am Ven. I am Talaxian." "Danny Reyes," Danny said. "Nice to meet you." Ven's ears turned toward him like satellite dishes. "Your species is very new to the galaxy. Many here believe you will not last through the first month of training. What do you believe?" Danny asked. Ven was quiet for a moment. "I believe it is unwise to judge any creature before seeing what it can do." Danny smiled slightly. "I think you and I are going to get along." The first week was designed to break them. Sergeant Crickstill was not cruel, but he was hard. He pushed the cadets beyond what they thought they could endure. They ran until their legs gave out. They fought until their muscles screamed. They studied battle tactics until their brains felt like they would explode. The Academy used special training pods that could create any battlefield inside a person's mind. The simulations felt completely real. The pain was set at 30%, which was enough to teach lessons without causing permanent damage. On the third day, Danny watched 3 of his fellow humans get carried out of the simulation chambers. They had faced a simple test: survive for 10 minutes against a squad of Kethrani warriors. The Kethrani were fast and hunted in packs like wolves. The humans had not lasted 5 minutes. When Danny's turn came, he stepped into the pod without hesitation. The door closed behind him. The neural interface connected to his brain, and suddenly he was somewhere else. He stood in a jungle on an alien world. 2 suns beat down through the thick canopy above. The heat was heavy and wet. Sweat immediately began to run down his face. In his hands, he held a standard coalition rifle. On his belt was a combat knife. Somewhere in the green darkness around him, 5 Kethrani hunters were closing in. Most cadets tried to find a place to hide and wait out the 10 minutes. They looked for rocks to put their backs against, trees to climb, holes to crawl into. They thought like prey. Danny did not think like prey. He started moving toward the hunters. In the observation room, Sergeant Crixthel and several other instructors watched the simulation feed on large screens. One of them, a thin alien with too many eyes, made a confused noise. "What is he doing?" it asked. "He is moving toward the threat markers." "Perhaps he is lost," another instructor suggested. "He is not lost," Sergeant Crixthel said quietly. His yellow eyes were fixed on the screen. In the simulation, Danny moved through the jungle like a shadow. He had grown up hunting on New Austin, tracking animals through rough terrain. He knew how to move without making noise. He knew how to use the land to hide himself. But he was not trying to hide. He was trying to attack. He found the first Kethrani 3 minutes into the simulation. It was a lean creature with gray skin and 4 arms, moving low through the undergrowth. It was looking for him, but looking in the wrong direction. Danny came from above. He had climbed a tree that the simulation designers had never expected anyone to climb. It was marked as decorative, not functional. But Danny had found handholds where there should not have been any. And now he dropped onto the Kethrani like a stone. His knife found its throat before it could make a sound. "Interesting," Sergeant Crixthel said in the observation room. 7 minutes into the simulation, Danny had killed 3 of the 5 hunters. He had used the jungle itself as a weapon, creating traps from vines and fallen branches. He had moved in patterns that made no sense to the Kethrani's hunting instincts, because he was not moving like prey or like the predators they knew. He was moving like something new. The last 2 hunters made a mistake. They were confused and frightened, and they came together for safety. Danny was waiting for them. When the simulation ended, Danny stepped out of the pod. He was breathing hard and covered in sweat, but he was smiling slightly. The other cadets stared at him like they had never seen him before. Sergeant Crixthel approached him. The massive alien looked down at the small human for a long moment. "You did not just survive," the sergeant said. "You won." "Yes, Sergeant," Danny said. "How?" Danny met those cold yellow eyes. "They expected me to act like prey, so I acted like a predator instead." Sergeant Crixthel was silent for a moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "your species will surprise us after all." He turned and walked away, leaving Danny standing among his amazed fellow cadets. Katie Brennan punched him in the shoulder. "You crazy fool," she said. "You actually attacked them?" "It worked, didn't it?" Danny said. Luis Garza shook his head. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest." Danny shrugged. "Maybe both." But deep inside, He felt something warm spreading through his chest. It was the feeling of proving himself, of showing that humans belonged here just as much as any other species. This was only the beginning. The sergeant ordered no mercy. The human cadet responded with precision and style. Part 2. 3 months passed at the academy. The purple sky of Velker Prime became familiar. The strange smells became normal. And Danny Reyes became a legend. It had not been easy. 4 of the original 12 human cadets had washed out during the first month. They could not handle the physical demands or the pressure that came from being watched and judged every single day. But the 8 who remained had grown stronger. They had learned to work together. They had learned to survive, and they had learned that humans could compete with any species in the galaxy. Danny stood in the barracks, cleaning his rifle with careful movements. He had done this same task 1,000 times. The repetition calmed his mind and let him think. Across the room, Katie was reading a tactical manual. Luis was taking apart a broken communicator just to see how it worked. The door opened and Ven walked in. Batalaxian had become Danny's closest friend at the academy. His silver fur was wet from the rain outside, and his large amber eyes looked troubled. "There is talk," Ven said, sitting down on the bunk across from Danny. "The instructors are planning something for you." "What kind of something?" Danny asked without looking up from his rifle. "No one knows for certain, but Sergeant Crixthal has been asking questions about your tactical decisions. He has been reviewing your simulation records over and over." Katie closed her book. "Is that good or bad?" "That," Ven said, "depends on whether the sergeant is impressed or suspicious." Luis set down his communicator parts. "Does it matter?" "Danny keeps winning. They can't fail him if he keeps winning." "This is not about passing or failing," Ven said. "The sergeant is looking for something. I can tell. My people are good at reading others. Sergeant Crixthal has found something interesting in Danny, and he wants to see more of it." Danny finally looked up. "Then I'll give him more to see." The next morning, Sergeant Crixthal called Danny to his office. The room was sparse and functional, with weapons from 12 different worlds mounted on the walls. The sergeant sat behind a desk that looked too small for his massive body. "Sit," he said, pointing to a chair. Danny sat. "You have performed well in your first 3 months," the sergeant said. "Better than expected. Better than any human before you." "Thank you, Sergeant." "I did not say it was a compliment." The sergeant leaned forward, his yellow eyes studying Danny like a puzzle to be solved. "I have been a soldier for 80 years. I have trained cadets from 47 species. I have seen every kind of fighter, every kind of tactic, every kind of warrior. But I have never seen anything quite like you." Danny waited in silence. "You do not fight like we train you to fight," Sergeant Crixthal continued. "You use our techniques, yes, but you change them. You adapt them. You take ideas from 12 different sources and combine them in ways no one has thought of before. Where does this come from?" Danny considered the question carefully before answering. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years, Sergeant. We have had wars that killed millions of our own people. We have invented countless ways to hurt and kill each other. It is not something we are proud of, but it has taught us to be creative." "Creative," the sergeant repeated. "Yes, that is the word. You are creative in destruction. When you cannot win with strength, you must win with thinking." Sergeant Crixthal leaned back in his chair. "I am assigning you to lead a squad in the upcoming battalion exercise. 12 cadets under your command. Your objective will be to capture and hold a fortified position against a larger force." Danny nodded. "Who will be in my squad?" "You may choose your own team." This was unusual. Normally, the instructors assigned squad members to test how cadets worked with strangers. Letting Danny choose his own people was either a reward or a trap. When is the exercise? Danny asked. 3 days from now. Do not disappoint me. Danny stood and saluted. I won't, Sergeant. He spent the next 3 days preparing. His squad included Katie and Luis, of course. He also chose Ven for his sharp senses and ability to spot enemies from great distances. He picked a Moravian named Grok, a huge creature covered in natural armor who could take hits that would kill 3 humans. And he selected a Jelani named Zira, whose 4 eyes could see in multiple directions at once. The rest of his squad were humans and aliens, who had shown loyalty and intelligence in previous exercises. Danny did not want the strongest fighters or the fastest runners. He wanted people who could think. The night before the exercise, Danny gathered his team in the barracks. The instructors expect us to lose, he said simply. They have given us a defensive position against a force twice our size. Most squads in this situation hold for about 20 minutes before they are overrun. Then what is the point? Asked Grok, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. The point is to show them something they haven't seen before. Danny spread a map on the table. We are not going to defend. We are going to attack. Katie raised an eyebrow. Attack while defending a position? The enemy will expect us to hide behind our walls and wait for them to come to us. Instead, we are going to go to them. Danny pointed to several locations on the map. Luis, I need you to work on the defense systems. Can you make them show false readings? Luis studied the map. Make them think we are weaker than we are? Yes, I can do that. Good. Katie, I want you to lead harassment raids. Small groups, hit and run. Keep them off balance, make them think we have more people than we do. Katie grinned. I can do that. Ven, you are my eyes. I need to know where every enemy soldier is at all times. My ears will hear them coming from a kilometer away, Ven promised. Grok, Zira, you will hold the center with the rest of the squad. Make noise. Draw attention. Make them think our entire force is there while Katie's teams hit them from the sides. Zira's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. And what will you do? Danny smiled. It was not a nice smile. I will be everywhere. The exercise began at dawn. The enemy force moved toward Danny's position with confidence. They had numbers on their side. They had experience. Their commander was a senior cadet who had won a dozen exercises before. They had no idea what was coming. Luis had worked through the night on the defense systems. When the enemy scanned Danny's position, they saw weak shields and few defenders. They thought this would be easy. The first attack came 30 minutes into the exercise. A squad of 10 moved toward the eastern wall. Expecting minimal resistance, Katie was waiting for them. Her team hit them from 3 directions at once. They did not try to kill all the enemies. They fired, caused confusion, and disappeared into the terrain before the enemy could respond. By the time the attack squad reached the wall, they had lost 4 members, and their formation was broken. The enemy commander sent more troops to secure the east. That was when Danny struck from the west. He moved through the battlefield like a ghost. The enemy soldiers were looking outward, watching for the defenders to come out. They never expected someone to already be behind their lines. Danny took down 6 enemies before they even knew he was there. The enemy commander grew frustrated. He had been told this would be a simple exercise and overwhelming force. Instead, his troops were being picked apart from multiple directions. He committed his reserves, sending everyone he had in one massive push toward the center of Danny's position. This was exactly what Danny wanted. With all enemy forces committed to the assault, there was no one left to protect their rear. Danny's counterattack came from behind, cutting through the enemy formation like a knife through soft bread. The exercise lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Danny's squad had not just held their position. They had destroyed the enemy force completely. In the observation room, Sergeant Crickstill watched the final moments of the battle. The other instructors were silent, stunned by what they had just witnessed. "Impossible," one of them whispered. "No cadet has ever done this." "Not impossible," Sergeant Crickstill said quietly. His yellow eyes were bright with something that might have been pride. Just unexpected. He stood and walked out of the room without another word. Later that day, he found Danny in the barracks, surrounded by his celebrating squadmates. "Cadet Reyes," the sergeant said. The room fell silent. "Explain your tactical decisions." Danny stood at attention. "The enemy expected defense, Sergeant. So I gave them attack. They planned for a siege. I gave them a battle. When they committed their reserves, they had nothing left to protect themselves. You took a great risk. If your counterattack had failed, you would have lost everything." "Yes, Sergeant. But the goal was to win, not to survive." The room was completely quiet. Everyone waited to see how the sergeant would respond. Sergeant Crickstill studied Danny for a long moment. Then he did something that made everyone gasp. He saluted. "Indeed," the sergeant said. "Indeed it was." He turned and left the barracks. Danny stood there, heart pounding, realizing that something had just changed forever. The humans had proven they could win. Now they had to prove they could keep winning. And Danny knew that the real tests were still to come. The sergeant ordered no mercy. The human cadet responded with precision and style. Part 3. The Crucible was the most important event at the academy. Every year, the best cadets from every species competed against each other in a series of brutal combat scenarios. The winning team received honors that would follow them for the rest of their careers. Generals watched the Crucible. Admirals sent scouts to recruit the winners. In 300 years. No species had won the Crucible in their first decade of membership in the coalition. Humans had been members for exactly 2 years. Sergeant Crickstill called Danny to his office 2 weeks before the competition. "You know about the Crucible?" the sergeant said. It was not a question. "Yes, Sergeant. You know that no one expects humans to win. Most do not expect you to even survive past the first round." "I have heard the talk," Danny admitted. The sergeant leaned forward. "I have selected you to lead a team in this year's competition. You will have 5 other cadets under your command. Choose wisely. The Crucible does not forgive mistakes." Danny felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. "Thank you for this opportunity, Sergeant. Do not thank me. Thank yourself by proving that my faith in you is not misplaced." The sergeant stood and walked to the window, looking out at the purple sky. "You will face teams that have been training together for years. Teams led by cadets whose species have won this competition many times. You are not expected to win." He turned back to face Danny. "But I expect you to make them remember you." Danny chose his team carefully. Katie Brennan for her aggression and tactical mind. Luis Garza for his technical skills. Ven the Talaxian for his senses. Grok the Moravian for his strength. And Zira the Zalani for her vision and quick thinking. 6 warriors from 4 different species. It was an unusual combination, but Danny believed in it. The first 3 rounds of the Crucible were standard combat scenarios. Attack a defended position. Hold a location against waves of enemies. Extract the target from hostile territory. Danny's team performed well in all 3, finishing in the top 5 after each round. But the 4th scenario was different. It was called the Gauntlet, and it was legendary. The night before the Gauntlet, Danny gathered his team in their assigned quarters. "Tomorrow will be the hardest test we have faced," he said. "The Gauntlet is designed to be impossible. Teams are dropped into hostile territory and must reach an extraction point 20 kilometers away. The terrain is filled with automated defenses, enemy patrols, and environmental hazards. No team has ever completed the gauntlet, Ven said quietly. His ears were flat against his head, a sign of worry. That is correct, Danny said. The scoring is based on how far each team gets before being eliminated. Most teams make it about halfway. Then, we make it more than halfway, Katie said firmly. Danny shook his head. No, we are going to do something different. Forget the extraction point. That is not our real goal. The others exchanged confused looks. The gauntlet tests how cadets handle impossible situations, Danny continued. Everyone else will try to sneak through, avoiding detection, moving slowly and carefully. That is what the designers expect. What do you expect us to do instead? Grok rumbled. Danny smiled. We are going to break their test. He turned to Luis. You have been studying the Academy's defense systems for months. Tell me what you have found. Luis's eyes lit up. He loved talking about technical details. The sensor towers in the gauntlet are networked together. If you disable one tower in exactly the right way, it creates a cascade failure. The adjacent towers lose their connection and shut down for about 30 seconds while they reset. 30 seconds is not very long, Zira observed. It is long enough, Danny said. We are not going to avoid the defenses. We are going to destroy them. The gauntlet began at dawn the next morning. Danny's team dropped into a canyon system, filled with sensor towers and patrol drones. The rocky terrain stretched out before them, a maze of narrow passages and high walls. Somewhere 20 kilometers away was the extraction point that no one had ever reached. Most teams immediately started looking for cover, planning their route to avoid detection. Danny pointed at the nearest sensor tower. Luis, take it down. What? Katie stared at him. We are supposed to be hiding. Everyone hides. That is why everyone fails. We are going to give them something they have never seen before. Luis nodded and started working. Within 5 minutes, he had figured out how to trigger the cascade failure. The first tower went dark, and then the next 2 towers followed. Move, Danny ordered. They ran through the gap in the sensor network, covering more ground in 5 minutes than most teams covered in an hour. When the towers reset, Danny's team was already targeting the next group. In the observation room, the instructors were in chaos. Alarms were flashing on their screens. The gauntlet's sensor network was being destroyed piece by piece. What are they doing? One instructor demanded. They are supposed to avoid detection, not attack the infrastructure. No one told them they could not attack it, another instructor said, sounding amazed. We just assumed no one would be foolish enough to try. Sergeant Cricksville said nothing. He watched the screens with intense focus, his yellow eyes following every move Danny's team made. Back in the gauntlet, Danny's team had destroyed a third of the sensor network. They were moving faster than any team in history, using the gaps they created to advance without detection. But the designers had built-in backup systems. Patrol drones began converging on their position, guided by the few sensors that still worked. Katie, Danny said. Draw them off. Katie grinned and broke away from the group with Ven. They made noise, fired shots, did everything they could to attract attention. The drones turned to pursue them. Meanwhile, Danny led the rest of the team through a narrow canyon that was supposed to be impassable. The walls were too steep to climb, the passage too dangerous for most species. But Grok's strength allowed him to create handholds in the rock itself, punching through stone that should have stopped them. Zira's multiple eyes spotted dangers before they became problems. And Danny found paths where the map said there were none. They emerged on the other side of the canyon, kilometers ahead of where they should have been. Katie and Ven rejoined them an hour later, having escaped the drones through a combination of speed and clever misdirection. This is actually working, Luis said, sounding surprised. Do not celebrate yet, Danny said. We still have far to go. They kept moving, kept destroying sensors, kept finding ways around obstacles that were supposed to stop them. The Gauntlet's designers scrambled to adjust, sending more drones, activating backup defenses, changing patrol patterns. It was not enough. Danny had spent weeks studying every record of the Gauntlet he could find. He knew its patterns, its rhythms, its weaknesses, and he exploited every single one. They did not reach the extraction point. No one ever had, and the designers had made sure that even destroying the sensor network would not make it possible. The final 5 kilometers were a death trap of overlapping defenses that no team could survive. But they came closer than any team in 300 years. When the simulation ended, Danny's team had traveled 18 kilometers. The previous record had been 14. In the observation room, there was complete silence. The instructors stared at their screens, unable to believe what they had witnessed. Finally, Sergeant Crick still spoke. They did not just try to beat the Gauntlet, he said slowly. They exposed fundamental flaws in its design. Every assumption we made about how cadets would behave, they proved wrong. We will have to redesign the entire scenario, one instructor said. Yes, Sergeant Crickstill agreed. We will. He stood and walked toward the exit. Where are you going? Another instructor asked. The sergeant paused at the door. To congratulate them, and to tell them that tomorrow's final round will be the true test of what they are capable of. He left the room, leaving the other instructors in stunned silence. Danny's team was waiting when the sergeant arrived. They were exhausted but proud. They knew they had done something special. You broke my test, Sergeant Crickstill said. His voice was hard to read. It might have been angry. It might have been something else. Danny met his gaze without flinching. You said to make them remember us, Sergeant. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sergeant Crickstill's massive shoulders began to shake. He was laughing. You have qualified for the final round, the sergeant said when his laughter faded. You will face the best team in the competition. They have won the Crucible 3 times in a row. Their species has dominated this event for over a century. Who are they? Katie asked. The Valorians, Sergeant Crickstill said. And they do not know how to lose. Danny looked at his team. They were tired, bruised, and pushed to their limits. But in their eyes, he saw something powerful. He saw belief. Then we will teach them, Danny said. The sergeant ordered no mercy. The human cadet responded with precision and style. Part 4, the final round of the Crucible, brought the entire academy to a standstill. Classes were canceled. Training exercises were postponed. Every cadet, every instructor, every administrator gathered to watch the battle that would decide this year's champion. Danny stood with his team in the preparation chamber. Through the window, he could see the simulation pods waiting for them. In a few minutes, they would enter and fight the most important battle of their lives. Across the room, the Valorians were preparing. They were tall and elegant, with skin like polished copper and eyes that glowed faint blue. They moved with a grace that came from 1,000 years of breeding for physical perfection. Their leader was Cadet Theron, and he had never lost an exercise in his entire time at the academy. Theron walked over to where Danny's team was gathered. His movements were confident, almost lazy. He looked at the humans and their alien squadmates like they were entertainment rather than opponents. I have watched your performances in the earlier rounds, Theron said. His voice was smooth and cold. You are clever, I will admit. You think in unusual ways. But cleverness is not enough against true warriors. Danny said nothing. My people have been soldiers since before your species learned to walk upright, Theron continued. We have centuries of martial tradition. We have genetic advantages that you cannot match. You may have surprised others, but you will not surprise us. Katie stepped forward, her red hair almost glowing with anger. Talk is cheap. Save it for the simulation. Theron smiled, showing perfect white teeth. The human female has spirit. Perhaps I will eliminate her first, as a kindness. You can try, Katie said. Danny put a hand on her shoulder. Save it, he said quietly. He wants us angry. Angry people make mistakes. Theron laughed. Wise advice, human. But wisdom will not save you either. He turned and walked back to his team, leaving Danny's squad staring after him. I want to beat him so badly, Louise muttered. You will get your chance, Danny said. Everyone, listen to me. The Valorians are faster and stronger than we are. Their reflexes are better. Their training is extensive. On paper, we cannot win. That is not very encouraging, Grok rumbled. But paper does not fight battles, Danny continued. Minds do. Hearts do. And we have something they do not have. What is that? Zira asked. Nothing to lose. They are expected to win. We are expected to lose. That means we can try anything, do anything, and if it fails, no one will be surprised. But if it works, we change history. A bell rang, signaling that it was time to enter the pods. Remember your training, Danny said. Trust each other. And whatever happens, do not give up. They walked to the pods one by one. Danny was the last to enter. Just before the door closed, he saw Sergeant Crickstill standing at the edge of the observation area. The massive Dorvanian caught Danny's eye and nodded once. Then he spoke two words that Danny could read on his lips, even from across the room. No mercy. The simulation began. Danny found himself standing in the ruins of an alien city. The buildings were shattered, the streets filled with rubble. The gravity was low, about 70% of Earth normal. The atmosphere was thin, making every breath feel incomplete. His team appeared around him, their images flickering into existence as the simulation loaded them in. They were scattered across the ruined city, each one alone. The objective was simple: eliminate the opposing team. Last one standing wins. Danny immediately started moving. He did not try to find high ground or secure a defensive position. Instead, he ran toward the center of the city, where the fighting would be thickest. The first contact came within minutes. A Valorian appeared from behind a ruined wall, moving with incredible speed. His blade was already swinging toward Danny's neck when Danny dropped flat and rolled under the strike. The Valorian was fast, but Danny had studied hundreds of hours of Valorian combat footage. He knew their opening moves, their favorite combinations, their recovery patterns. When the alien turned for a follow-up attack, Danny was already somewhere else. They fought in the ruins, dancing around each other like shadows. The Valorian grew frustrated. Danny was not fighting like any opponent he had faced before. He did not stand and trade blows. He did not try to match speed with speed. Instead, he stayed just out of reach, always moving, always changing direction. Stand still and fight, the Valorian snarled. No, Danny said. He grabbed a piece of rubble and threw it at the Valorian's face. Not to hurt him, but to distract him. In the half-second it took the alien to dodge, Danny closed the distance and drove his combat knife into the weak point under the Valorian's arm. The alien's image flickered and vanished as the simulation registered the kill. First blood to the humans. Across the city, Katie and Ven were working together. The Talaxian's ears could hear footsteps from hundreds of meters away. He guided Katie through the ruins, always keeping her one step ahead of the Valorians who were hunting them. When two Valorians cornered them in an alley, Katie did something no one expected. Instead of retreating, she ran straight at them, screaming at the top of her lungs. The surprise bought her 2 seconds. That was enough. Ven had circled around behind the Valorians while Katie kept their attention. His blade found the first one's back while Katie tackled the second one to the ground. It was ugly and messy and completely against every rule of elegant Valorian combat. It worked. Meanwhile, Luis had found a damaged power station in the eastern part of the city. His technical skills allowed him to restore partial power, and he used it to reactivate the city's old security system. Suddenly, the Valorians found themselves being tracked by cameras and targeted by automated defenses. The security systems were weak and easy to avoid, but they served their purpose. They kept the Valorians distracted, forced them to divide their attention. Grok and Zira held the center of the city. The Moravian's natural armor made him nearly invincible to normal attacks, and Zira's 4 eyes meant no one could sneak up on them. They did not try to advance. They simply held their ground, forcing the Valorians to go around them or through them. One Valorian tried to go through them. It was a mistake. As the battle continued, Darren grew increasingly frustrated. His team was being picked apart by opponents who refused to fight fair. Every time a Valorian cornered a human, something unexpected happened. Traps went off. Allies appeared from nowhere. The terrain itself seemed to work against them. "This is not how warriors fight," Theron said into his communication device. "They have no honor. They have results," one of his teammates replied. Just before his signal went dead. 30 minutes into the simulation, the score was 4-2. 4 Valorians eliminated, only 2 members of Danny's team down. Katie had finally been caught by a flanking attack, and Grok had sacrificed himself to protect Louise during a coordinated assault, but that still left Danny. Then, Luis and Zira against Theron and 1 other Valorian. Danny knew what had to happen next. The final confrontation. He found Theron in the central square of the ruined city. The Valorian commander stood alone, his copper skin gleaming in the dim light. His blade was drawn, held in the perfect stance that his species had perfected over centuries. "Your teammates are hunting mine," Theron said. "Soon it will be just us." "It is already just us," Danny replied. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? A duel. Honor against honor." Theron smiled coldly. "I wanted to destroy you publicly. I wanted everyone to see that humans are nothing compared to the Valorians. Then come and prove it." They moved at the same moment. Theron was faster. His blade cut through the air with blinding speed. Danny should have died in the first second, but Danny had watched every fight Theron had ever been in. He knew the Valorian's opening gambit. He had seen him use it a dozen times, always successfully. Until now, Danny did not try to block. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he moved toward Theron, inside the arc of the blade, so close that the weapon passed over his shoulder instead of through his chest. They stood face to face for a single heartbeat. Then, Danny drove his knife into Theron's throat. The Valorian's eyes went wide with shock. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Then his image flickered and vanished. The simulation was over. Danny stood alone in the ruined square, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. He had just done the impossible. He had beaten the unbeatable. When the pod door opened, the first thing Danny heard was cheering. Human cadets were screaming with joy. Even some of the alien cadets had joined in, impressed despite themselves. His team gathered around him. Katie, respawned from the simulation, punched him in the shoulder. "You crazy fool. You actually beat him." "We beat them," Danny corrected. "All of us, together." Across the room, Theron stood with his team. The Valorian's face was blank, but his hands were clenched into fists. He had never lost before. He did not know how to handle it. Sergeant Crixthal approached Danny. The massive Dorvanian looked down at the small human, his yellow eyes unreadable. "I told you no mercy," the sergeant said. "I followed orders," Danny replied. "You did more than that." Sergeant Crickstill placed one of his 4 hands on Danny's shoulder. You showed the galaxy what humans can do. Today, everything changes. Danny looked at his team and his friends who had fought beside him against impossible odds. This is just the beginning, he said. The sergeant ordered no mercy. The human cadet responded with precision and style. Part 5. The Great Hall of the Academy had seen many ceremonies over its 3 centuries of existence. Warriors from dozens of species had stood on its stone floor to receive honors. Generals and admirals had given speeches beneath its vaulted ceiling. History had been made here countless times, but nothing quite like today. The hall was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Ambassadors had traveled from distant worlds to witness this moment. News drones floated near the ceiling, broadcasting the ceremony to billions of viewers. Every seat was filled, and thousands more watched from the corridors outside. Danny Reyes stood at attention with his team in front of the stage. Katie was on his left, her red hair pulled back tight. Luis was on his right, looking uncomfortable in his formal uniform. Behind them stood Ven, Grok, and Zira, the aliens who had chosen to fight alongside humans. They were all nervous. They all tried not to show it. Sergeant Crickstill walked to the podium. He wore his dress uniform, covered with medals from campaigns that had happened before any human had ever left Earth. When he spoke, his deep voice filled the hall without effort. The Crucible tests more than skill, he began. It tests character. It tests adaptability. It tests the ability to face impossible challenges and refuse to accept defeat. For 300 years, this competition has separated the great from the merely good. He paused and looked directly at Danny's team. This year, we witnessed something extraordinary. A team of newcomers did more than win. They made us question everything we thought we knew. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Danny kept his eyes forward. The humans did not fight as we expected, Sergeant Crickstill continued. They did not follow our rules. They did not respect our traditions. They looked at challenges we called impossible and asked why we believed they were impossible. The murmurs grew louder. Some sounded angry. Some sounded amazed. When I ordered Cadet Reyes to show no mercy, I expected aggression. I expected ferocity. I expected the desperate fighting of a species, trying to prove itself. The sergeant stepped away from the podium and walked toward Danny. What I received was something far more dangerous. He stopped directly in front of the human cadet, looking down at him with those cold yellow eyes. I received precision. Every move calculated. Every decision made with purpose. The humans did not waste energy on anger or pride. They simply won. Sergeant Crickstill turned back to face the audience. And they did it with style. Not the flashy style of showing off, but the quiet style of confidence. They knew they could win, and they did not need to prove it to anyone but themselves. He raised one of his forearms in a formal gesture. For the first time in history, a species has won the Crucible in their first decade of membership. More than that, this team has forced us to redesign our training programs, reconsider our tactical doctrines, and admit that we have much to learn from those we once dismissed as primitive. The hall was completely silent now. I am proud to announce that Team Reyes has won this year's Crucible. May their names be remembered as long as this academy stands. The applause started slowly. A few humans in the audience began clapping. Then more joined. Then the Talaxians, who had always treated humans with fairness. Then others, species after species adding their voices until the sound became a roar that shook the ancient walls. Danny allowed himself a small smile. Beside him, Katie was wiping her eyes and pretending she was not crying. Luis was staring at the crowd in disbelief. When the applause finally faded, there was one more thing to do. Sergeant Crickstill presented each member of the team with a medal. The design was traditional, a star made of rare metals that could only be found on specific worlds. It was the highest honor a cadet could receive. When he reached Danny, the sergeant paused. "You have done something remarkable," he said quietly, so only Danny could hear. "But I suspect you already know that." "I know that we had help," Danny replied. "Without the right team, I would have failed." A wise answer. The mark of a true leader is knowing that victory belongs to everyone who contributed. The sergeant pinned the medal to Danny's chest. "What will you do now?" It was the question Danny had been thinking about for weeks. "The Coalition has a frontier sector that needs help," he said. "Pirates have been raiding settlements for 10 years. No one wants the assignment because it is dangerous and far from anything important." "You would volunteer for such a difficult posting?" Danny looked at his team. They had already discussed this. They all knew what they wanted. "Someone has to protect those people," he said. "And my team works best when the odds are against us." Sergeant Crickstill studied him for a long moment. Then he did something that made the entire hall gasp at the massive Dorvanian, the veteran of 100 battles. The instructor who had broken thousands of cadets over 8 decades of service bowed his head in respect. "Then the galaxy had better prepare itself," he said, "because it has no idea what is coming." The ceremony ended, but the celebrations continued late into the night. Humans and aliens mixed together, sharing drinks and stories. Old prejudices began to fade as species who had dismissed humanity as primitives learned the truth. Humans were not weak. They were simply different. And that difference made them dangerous. Danny slipped away from the party and walked to a balcony overlooking the Academy grounds. The purple sky of Velker Prime stretched above him, filled with unfamiliar stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world he had left behind to prove that his species belonged among the stars. Katie found him there a few minutes later. "You should be inside celebrating," she said. "You earned it." "I needed some quiet," Danny admitted. "Everything happened so fast. I'm still processing it. We really did it." Katie leaned against the railing beside him. "We won the Crucible. Humans have never done that before. We're the first. But we won't be the last." Danny looked up at the stars. "That's what matters. We showed everyone that humans can compete. Now other humans will follow. Better ones. Smarter ones. They'll build on what we started and go even further. You're thinking too much about the future. Can't you just enjoy the present for one night?" Danny smiled. "I've spent my whole life preparing for what comes next. It's hard to stop. Then let me help." Katie grabbed his arm and pulled him back toward the hall. "Come on. Luis is trying to teach the Moravians how to dance. It's terrible. You have to see it." Danny laughed and let her lead him back to the celebration. She was right. There would be time for planning and preparing tomorrow. Tonight was for celebrating with the people who had become his family. 3 months later, a small ship departed from Velker Prime. It carried 6 warriors and enough supplies for a long journey. Their destination was the frontier, a wild space where pirates preyed on innocent people and no one came to help. That was about to change. Danny Reyes stood at the front of the ship, looking out at the stars. Behind him, his team was preparing for whatever challenges awaited them. Katie was checking weapons. Louise was running diagnostics on the ship's systems. Ven was meditating, preparing his senses for the dangers ahead. Grok was sleeping, conserving energy in the way his species always did before a fight. Zira was watching everything with her 4 eyes, missing nothing. They were humanity's first warriors among the stars. The first to prove that size and claws and ancient traditions were not the only measures of strength. The first to show that courage and creativity could overcome any obstacle. And they were just the beginning. On the day they won the Crucible, Sergeant Crix, Otto had said that the galaxy did not know what was coming. He was right. Humans were coming, and they would show no mercy to anyone who threatened those they had sworn to protect. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its precious cargo toward a future that no one could predict. The stars blurred and stretched, and then they were gone. History had been made. More history was waiting to be written. And Danny Reyes and his team would be the ones to write it. The end.